Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and Prez, and this is episode 429. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Prez, that is @_Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing on this Thursday evening, early evening?
I'm doing all right, man. About to hit the road for some travel, which is good because there's nothing to talk about except for the few things we will talk about. And as a sample of how little there is to talk about, the latest topic of discussion in the Strickland Discord was Deuce's new apartment. So there you go.
A very worthwhile conversation that we were having. Great job by Deuce getting an apartment. What a world. All right. We're not going to talk about that. We will talk about other things. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, Strickland has Instagram. Check that out. That is at Strickland on Instagram. We're posting on the new content on there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you haven't done so already, please like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merch, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to, that gives you access to multiple things, and there are many tiers. There's a $6 tier that gives you access to Strickland's podcast that I was every Friday the Prize. You also got access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, Randle, about the Knicks and more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matt Miranda, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which, you guessed it, is our podcast that is about the NFL, that is hosted by Constantine Metricos. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Let's go with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline. The game starts here. So a couple minor things have happened since we last talked. The Knicks signed Landry Shamet to a training camp deal, an Exhibit 9. I did not even know an Exhibit 9 contract existed. They also, and more, I don't want to say more importantly, but more potentially exciting news, they also signed Marcus Morris to an Exhibit 9 contract. They have one roster spot left on the active roster. It is very likely to go to one of these two players, I would assume. I personally would like for it to be Morris. I don't know if you have a preference or if you have any thoughts on either of these additions.
I like Morris for non-basketball reasons. I just like somebody who's not afraid to be mean to the other team. I think last year Celtics didn't have a goon and they still won the championship, and that is an exception. I feel like this is a person in the cast of characters that most good teams have. Especially given our best players are not really the fiery type. They get excited, they get pumped up, but they're not about to be tell another player to go fuck off or something. So yeah, and in event of the plague, Mook can shoot the hell out of the ball. Almost like he's not quite the shooter that Bogdanovich is, but they're similar in old can't move, can shoot kind of. You could just stick him out there and just be run from 3-point line to 3-point line. So I don't know. The vibes feel right with Mook.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good addition, especially not in the sense of no, I don't think next year it changes their championship odds or something because they signed either of these players, even Morris, who I like. But we can be honest about their 11 to 15 guys last year. They were fucking bad. Like they were a joke, to be honest. You had like Daquan Jeffries and Mamadi Diakite and guys like this who are just not ever NBA players. Don't care how well they practice. They were just never going to be useful on an NBA floor. Now, instead of that, you have guys who, yeah, look, they're probably not, I mean, especially in 2024, Marcus Morris is not a good NBA player, but he is somebody who is obviously very experienced, has played a lot of basketball. He even played playoff minutes last year for Cleveland when they were beat up. The one thing that's good about him, look, man, the guy can shoot. It is what it is. He's a consistent 40% plus 3-point shooter at this point. He's been that for years, and having a player like that as your depth piece, as like a breaking case of emergency type of player, who can ostensibly maybe play some 4, small ball 5, whatever. Yeah, I think that's useful, and I'm not going to say exciting, but it's an indication, I think, that they are very much taking this year seriously, and not that they were unserious prior, but I think they have no misgivings about what they are and what their expectations are, more importantly, which is to contend and compete for a championship. And I don't personally think they came into last season or any of the previous seasons with that feeling. Maybe by the end of last year, they thought with a couple pieces we can get there. Or sorry, by the end of, I want to say 2022, 23, that with a couple pieces they get there. And I would guess that after they got OG, they felt very good about the direction they're trending. Clearly, they were not of the opinion they were all the way there, and thus the big move for Mikal Bridges. But I do think these depth signings, again, are more indicative of a team that is not just now worried about, well, we want to have good guys that practice hard and aren't going to be upset when they don't play. And look, you're attracting these players also says something about where you stand, right? Like Campaign played in the playoffs last year. Marcus Morris played in the playoffs last year. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and personality-wise, they're good vets. Like I people who are like, oh, what configuration? Like we can talk about like when they would see the court, but I would not really spend a lot of time thinking about it because I think they'll only see the court in very desperate situations with multiple injuries. But we like you said, we ran into that last year and didn't really have any options. So, good on the front office for getting with it. I've talked about it before, but I feel like the very end of the bench should always be used on vets who can play in crisis or developmental bets. And for a contending team that doesn't have developmental minutes, the other category is the logical choice. So ain't no problem with that from Prez.
Yeah, with that. Okay. So moving on to something that I think is more exciting, more important, whatnot. Our great coach and leader, Tom Thibodeau, did a quick Q&A with Steve Ashburner of NBA.com. And look, he said a lot of things in there, but one caught the eye more than others. So I'm going to read it. The question from Ashburner was, how do you begin to replace Hartenstein? And this was Thibs' answer. We went through that last year. We started the season where Mitchell was the starter, and he was off to a monster start. When he went out, Jericho Sims started initially. Jesus Christ. Then he got hurt. Then Isaiah came in and did what he did.
No trigger warning from Ashburn. Next time, my guy.
Well, this is Thibs.
Oh.
But when he got hurt, Preshua came in along with Taj Gibson, so we rotated guys at that position the entire year. We'll probably have to do it by committee. We'll look at some different things because we have versatility. We could see Julius more at the 5. Don't want to do that for long stretches. It would take its toll. But to have him do it for 10 or 15 minutes, I think he can do it well. He also would create a lot of advantages. Well, this is interesting, mostly because Yes, I think we all agree that I have to do it by committee. The concern has been what is the committee in the eyes of Tom Thibodeau? And if that committee does not involve any minutes of Julius Randle at the 5, which he has been reticent to do in the prior 4 seasons, then how do we get enough minutes for all of these guys that you have now? Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, even Deuce McBride. How are you getting all of these guys the minutes that I wouldn't even say that they need, but as much as they deserve, especially if the point is to win games. And Randle playing at the 5 for 10 to 15 minutes, if that is a thing. And look, I think it's worth noting he brought this up unprompted. This was not he was not asked about anything directly related to what do you think about Julius playing the center position. He brought this up himself, and he was very specific in the sense of 10 to 15 minutes. I will say I have felt this is a thing that could happen, but I was not gonna, I wasn't exactly waiting for it given Tibbs' reluctance in the past of using Randle at the 5. Obviously, now we have improved defensive personnel on the wings, and again, the fact that he said this unprompted, I kind of believe it, and I believe it also because the Knicks seem to make it a priority when they made this big trade for Mikal Bridges of, well, we're going to give you all the picks. We'll do that. But we're not giving you any player that we actually value as a long-term piece in the rotation. And that, to me, indicates that they think their top 8 is championship-ready, championship caliber, which means you have to find minutes for all of them. And the only way to find those minutes, which I never sit down and do like the rotation thing where people try to figure out what's the optimal split. Cause I'm just like, I'll watch that. Like it can, I don't need to like see it written out. I think you can kind of visualize it in your head. It was pretty obvious that the only way to get everybody the minutes they needed, especially those top 8 guys, was for Randle to play minutes to 5. And we know that the front office in the past has made personnel moves to kind of, I don't want to say, but personnel moves. We've seen decisions, rotation changes that give credence to the idea of them. I don't even want to say prodding Thibs, but making suggestions to Thibs and him taking them on board and guiding his rotation. Obviously we saw that a couple years ago, and Evan Fournier and Derrick Rose just basically get permanently moved to the bench, and Deuce McBride entered the rotation, more minutes for Grimes. We saw this last year where Obi Toppin goes out and everybody is freaking out. Why don't we have a backup 4? Who's the backup 4? And me and you and many others were just like, it's probably just Josh Hart. That's it. Like, I don't think there's anything else coming here. They'll figure it out when they figure it out. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, all of that is to say, I buy this. I think we're going to get Randle at the 5. And quite honestly, I thought this, I stand by this. I thought as much as I think the Mikal Bridges trade gives them another valuable piece, I thought Isaiah Hartenstein going out the door pretty much meant that we did not have a championship ceiling as currently constructed. But that could change depending on how the team was deployed. And this is the deployment that I and many others have been talking about as being necessary and critical to getting the full potential out of this team. And that is exciting because I think, I'm taking this I'm taking Thibs at his word. I buy this, and I think this is the avenue for them to really open up that championship potential, ceiling, upside, whatever you want to call it.
Could you say a little more about like how you envision the success with that configuration? Because like the obvious thing is like, 5 out or sort of 5 out, and then more space for Randle and more space for Brunson, who are hard enough to guard normally. But like usually when we see these, quote unquote death lineups, they have elements like they're clearly offensively juiced, but they also have defensive fortitude. And I know some people are concerned with what this looks like with like Brunson and Randle and say Dante. In the past, Randle's defense is the reason why Thibs has had an aversion to this. But like you mentioned, we have OG and McCall, who are in theory two very high end perimeter defenders. So like what is the defense? What do you think the defense looks like with that sort of unit? Or do you think it doesn't matter because this is like a fucking rocket launcher offensive unit?
Yeah, I kind of don't think it matters. Like, I don't think you're putting this lineup. I mean, it matters. You can't be like fucking garbage, obviously. But the lineup is clearly the strength of it is going to be that, yeah, offense is awesome and have fun trying to play defense against us. I also think it's worth noting, like, if you're kind of assuming Randle, whenever they go to this Randle at the 5 lineup, that entails and involves both OG and Mikal Bridges being on the floor with him, which I do think is a fair assumption to make. I don't know that always has to be with Brunson. Like it could be, hey,
Yeah,
you know what? Because if we're being, honest, I guess, about last year's team, the offense consistently cratered, especially after we traded for OG, when Brunson went to the bench, like totally cratered. And that was a big issue during the season, even when Randle was healthy.